everyone. My name is Aleana Young, and I run a small store in Cathedral called Takeaway Gourmet, and I'm pretty confident that we have the best cheese in the whole province of Saskatchewan. There are many cows here today, mostly being discussed for other uses, but I thought why not celebrate one of the other delicious outputs of our four-legged friends. And with me, I have my two brand new but incredibly talented cheese assistants. Would you introduce yourself and tell us your favorite?
I'm Eli Collins, and my favorite cheese is the orange Gouda.
And to my left,
Cat.
Cow cheese. It's a classic.
a bold statement. So what we're going to do here today is basically give you a Cheese 101 course, basically brief history of cheese, different kinds of cheese, a couple fun facts, how to make your very own cheese tray. And we're going to be doing this, again, with assistance from these two lovely people, complete with samples. So, cheese, in addition to being delicious, it actually predates written history. So, prior to 7000 BC, we have archaeological evidence of cheese-making tools, primarily in North Africa, but also in the Indus Valley. I like cheese mostly because it is a very easy way to impress people when you are entertaining. Throw out a couple pieces, a few chunks of fruit, crackers, and people are just thrilled. Important to keep in mind for this very busy holiday season. So generally, if you're doing a cheese tasting, which I also think is a great way to entertain your friends and family over the holidays, you always want to start with your mildest cheese. So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to start with some cheese samples of our mildest cheese, which is this bad boy over here. It's a creamy white one, and this is a triple cream from France. It is essentially the socially acceptable way to eat butter. And what makes it extra creamy is that they inject extra fat into the cheese before it's made. You want to drop off some samples? So we will be walking around some samples of this. If you don't want to try it, I won't be offended. God knows it's my favorite cheese, so more for me. As I said, it's a triple cream from France, and this one is pasteurized, although I do have some raw milk cheeses with me here today. This one we are serving on a cracker, mostly for ease of delivery, as it is quite spreadable. This is actually the very first cheese that I had when I was but a lousy graduate student. I don't know who gave me such a nice piece of cheese, but I had it, and I think I had previously grown up on delicious marble, which I still love, and I thought, wow, that's scrumptious. How do I do that for a job? Just kidding, but it is great, and if you don't get a sample, we do have lots more. The next cheese that I want to talk about very briefly is this one right here. So this is a goat's milk cheese, and this one is actually also from France. This is a raw milk cheese. This is called Clos de Berry, but you don't need to remember the name. This one is really bright, really citrusy, and I think also a gorgeous example of a goat cheese. Goat cheeses tend to be that beautiful pure white compared to a cow's milk cheese, which does tend to have a little bit more of that kind of creamy yellow color to it. And we also have a second goat cheese here. So this first one, which will be the super, super white one, is the Clos de Berry, and again, it'll be really bright, really citrusy. And the second one, which has a little bit more of a color to it, and it does have a little bit of a rind, which you can eat or not eat. It's totally your preference. This second one is a smoked goat cheese from Spain. So this is, normally I think smoked cheese is kind of crummy. It's just an easy way to cover up bad cheese. Much like delicious barbecue is an easy way to make traditionally less desirable cuts of meat super scrumptious. So this goat cheese though is actually a delicious naturally smoked birch smoked cheese from Spain. So you're gonna go out with those. You're gonna go out with those. Molly, I'll give you these napkins too. You're welcome. So round two. So basically what I'm going to try and do today is walk you through a couple different cheeses, couple different textures. We started with the soft cheese from France, and now we are moving to some goat cheeses, also from Europe. Don't worry, I do have some Canadian cheeses here as well. And the two that are going out with young Eli are Clos de Berry, which is the super white one, which is a raw milk goat cheese from France, and the other one is actually called El de Fio, and it's lightly smoked and from Spain. Goat cheeses tend to have a really distinctive taste to them. I didn't realize this before opening a cheese store, but I think some people are kind of biologically opposed to goat cheese, the same way some people just think cilantro tastes like soap. Some people just think it tastes like a barn. I don't have that sad affliction, but if you taste it and think it tastes like a barn, you're probably amongst them. The next cheese that we are going to talk about is another soft cheese. And this is the only sheep cheese that we have. Thank you, Molly. Sheep cheese is actually my favorite type of cheese. You heard me say that goat cheese has like kind of a distinctive taste to it. It tends to be really tangy, for lack of a better word, which is why a lot of people actually really like that smoked one, because the smoke kind of cuts through the tanginess. Sheep cheese has all of the delicious fat of a goat cheese, a higher fat content, but sheep cheese generally doesn't have that really distinctive taste. This one is what I call a little bit farmy. So we were smelling it earlier. There's just a tiny eau de barn amongst this cheese, but I thought it would fit in well here. And this is one of my favorite cheeses. The grand scheme of strong cheeses, this is really down there. It's relatively mild, but unlike the first one that you would have tried, which was basically just, as I said, the socially acceptable way to eat butter, nothing but cream and salt. This one has a tiny, tiny bit of funkiness to it, but about 5% out of 100. Yes. You guys are being so helpful, thank you.
How many cheeses do you carry in your shop?
Ooh, how many cheeses do we carry in our shop? I don't know why I'm looking at you, you don't know the answer. Right now, we probably have about 50 in. I do try and source as many as I can from within Canada, but you all probably know interprovincial trade can be a bit of a burden. So it is actually oftentimes, unfortunately, easier for me to get a raw goat's milk cheese from France in than it is to bring in a delicious cheddar cheese from Alberta. But I do try and buy as many Canadian cheeses as I can. Napkins. Okay, while the sheep cheese is going around, what will I move to next? I think I will move back to the continent of Europe. And I'm going to talk to you about cave-aged cheeses. So this one right here is a cave-aged Gruyere. It's 18 months old, and when I say cave-aged, I do actually mean it lives in a cave, like the type of cave you would think of. Cheddar cheese is actually named after Cheddar Gorge and the caves in which the cheddar was aged, and you can have artificial cheese caves as well. There's a great cheese we carry in the shop that I am sold out of right now, but somebody actually built or purchased an old French fortress and turned the entire thing into a cheese cave. Why you age a cheese in a cave? It's similar to making delicious wine or beer. Basically, the characters of the earth and the air and the atmosphere really add to that terroir or the distinctive taste. So this one, as I said, is a cave-aged Gruyere, 18 months old. Gruyere is kind of a classic cheese that a lot of people know, key ingredient in French onion soup. But until you've had like a real raw milk Gruyere, you totally haven't had it. I actually don't care for Gruyere, and I brought this one in grudgingly. Thank you. And I'm a convert. So The Gruyere is going to be really savory, which is a flavor profile that we haven't had yet today. We've mostly been in the mild and a little bit salty, but this one is going to be super savory and a little bit fruity, with a really nice crunch to it. And that crunch comes from the salt crystals in the cheese. In addition, on the other side, we have an aged Gouda or Gouda from Holland. This is one of our best sellers. We call this our gateway cheese. And we call it that because the very first morning that I was open for business, after having quit my sane salaried job, praying that somebody would come in, we had a fellow come in. He was probably not necessarily my go-to target market for imported cheeses, but he came, he was open-minded, he tried some things, and he got to that one, and he said, well, it's the best damn cheese I've ever had in my life. And I said, oh, I'm glad you like it. And he said, well, I'll take a pound. And I said, well, sir, that's like $40. Are you sure? And he said, no, I think that cheese is a gateway. It's awakened something in me. And now he comes back every 6 weeks, buys a pound, and goes on his merry way. So aged Gouda, it'll also have some of that crunch, which is a thing that I like. I like a cheese with a little bit of bite. And it is, again, one of our most popular. The last two cheeses that we are going to talk about today are this very kind of sad-looking cheese, but this is actually super good. It is not the most visually interesting of all of our cheeses, but this is the one Canadian cheese that I brought today, and this is called silo cheddar. It comes from Quebec, so I guess it's actually called silo, and it is called that because it is aged in an old stone silo. Some, I don't know, burnt out investment banker from Montreal currently quit his very same stable, high-paying job and decided to start making cheese, found an old silo on his farm and turned it into a cheese cave. This one is actually a year older than our helpful assistant Molly, who I believe is 5 years old, and this is actually a 6-year-old Canadian cheddar. So most of the time when you age a cheese, the moisture content goes down considerably. That's why a lot of people who are lactose intolerant can have really old cheeses, like an old cheddar or Parmesan or something, and that's often why when you use a really old cheese, like a Parmesan, it's not going to melt, it'll just crisp up, right? So you can make it into like delicious cheese crackers or put it on top of things for a little bit of texture, but you're not going to get that like delicious, stringy, cheesy goodness. This one, despite being 6 years old, due to the way that they age it, they actually kept a lot of the moisture in, so it actually melts like velvet and will have a really creamy mouthfeel despite being super sharp and a little bit gritty. So again, it has that really nice texture. The last cheese that I have, which is probably the most divisive of all of our fine fromages today, is the blue cheese. I'm actually shocked by how many people love blue cheese. I thought we would not sell very much blue cheese and it would mostly be me eating it alone merrily, as I do love it. But we sell way more blue cheese than we sell goat cheese. So this one that I brought today, you guys are the first people who get to try this. We've only had it in the store once before and I haven't had it in since, I think, March. This is actually from Ireland, and it is called Irish Cashel Blue. And in the 70s, there was a big resurgence of cheese making in Ireland, in lots of Europe, mostly due to changes in manufacturing, the economy, but also due to the world wars. There's a lot of loss of knowledge around kind of traditional production, like cheese. And then in the 70s, particularly in the United Kingdom, but also in continental Europe and in Canada as well, you had a little bit of a resurgence. So this is one of the first cheeses to make it big in the cheese world, coming out of Ireland. And the Queen of England herself is on the record as saying she is very fond of this cheese. So I figured, what better fromage to bring here? If you don't like blue cheese, that's okay. We did a morning spot with Global last week, and their intrepid reporter decided it would be a good idea to try blue cheese on live TV for the very first time in her whole life. It did not go well. It went well for me, probably less well for her, but it did make some good TV. So this blue cheese, in the grand scheme of blue cheese, relatively mild. Relatively mild. It'll be really creamy, a little punch of blue, but nothing too kooky. So like if you can deal with a blue cheese sauce with a buffalo wing, you will be fine. It's generally how I get people into the blue cheese game. And it is an acquired taste, but the only way to acquire it is to continue to eat more of it. So while these last samples are going around, I guess I will see, does anybody have any cheese-based questions, concerns? Yes, sir, in the back. How do you make cheese? All right, so the question is, how do you make cheese? And thankfully for all of us, I don't make it. But it's pretty cool. It's a little bit art, a little bit science. Basically, you want to take milk, you want to heat it, you want to add some sort of acid, so you can have cheeses that you can make cheese at home just using milk and lemon juice or vinegar. It's going to be pretty bland tasting, but all you want to do is get the milk to curdle, and then you add something to help it coagulate, and you add something very special called a culture. So what is a culture? Cultures are basically bacteria, and these are the top secret pieces of intellectual property in the cheese world. These are closely held, and it's what gives cheese really different tastes. So a lot of the time when people come in and they don't want to try the delicious blue cheese, they say it's because they don't want to eat any mold or bacteria. Unfortunately, all cheese is full of bacteria. Good bacteria, but it's there. So yeah, if you're really bored at home, with your parents' permission, a little bit of milk, a little bit of vinegar, heat it up, and you'll see it start to separate into the curds and whey, and then you can add salt, you can add whatever you want, and you, sir, have made your very own cheese. Any other questions? Okay, well, seeing none, we will hang out at the front here. We have more of all of the other cheeses if anybody would like to try them. We also have one that we didn't hand out. Do you think we should hand this one out? Okay, we'll hand this one out. This is our one surprise cheese. And this is a Dutch cheese that I put on here really just because it's super pretty, but this is the last bit that I have in the store. So I didn't